So, frigates are large ships which you can own multiple of in No Man's Sky, and they are bigger than your starship but smaller than your freighter, and they will take up the vast majority of your overall fleet. So, as with a lot of other features in No Man's Sky, there is a lot you've got to learn around frigates, so I've created this video going over absolutely everything you need to know about them. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get stuck in. Right, so as I mentioned, frigates are currently the second largest intergalactic ship you can own behind your freighter, and they will also come in different classes as well, so C, B, A and S. But these can be ranked up, and more on that later in the video. And currently they come in 5 different types, so support, exploration, industrial, trade and combat, and each one is suited better to different types of expeditions. You will usually come across them when exploring space surrounding an NPC freighter. And No Man's Sky players can build up a fleet of their own, and as of the creation of this video, you can own up to 30 frigates at any given time once you've got yourself your own freighter. And here's a fun fact, if you do manage to obtain 30 frigates at any one time, you will then be granted the title of Admiral, but you can then send your frigates out on a variety of expeditions to other star systems for some pretty lucrative rewards. And these can all be controlled from a fleet command room on board your freighter, and I'll go into more detail on that later in the video. But first, let's talk about the different types and how you can get your hands on them. The cost of frigates varies along with freighters and ships and all that good stuff, but they could range anywhere from 1 million to, I don't know, tens of millions, so they ain't exactly cheap. But making money in No Man's Sky ain't exactly that difficult either, so you can soon buy a whole load of them. So, as of the creation of this video, we do have 5 different types. The first one is a combat specialist, which has higher combat capabilities, and it can assist you guys by warping nearby and sending out friendly ships, but this can only be done if your freighter happens to be in the same system as you, and also assumes that your frigate is not currently out on an expedition. If you happen to have multiple combat ones, then the one that comes to your assistance is usually the one that has the highest combat stats out of the lot, which is also ideal. And the ships that come to help you are normal starships with gold engine trails, a bit like your squadrons, instead of the green engine trails like standard NPC ships. And next you've got the exploration specialist, which does what it says on the tin really. It has higher exploration capabilities for exploration based expeditions. And it does have a little trick up its sleeve as well, so it can activate its archive scanner to find the location of an ancient ruin in the current star system. Moving on to the industrial specialist, which has a higher industrial capability. These vessels can produce 2 magnetized ferrites every 30 seconds up to a maximum of 100 magnetized ferrite after about 25 minutes. You can then jump onto the frigate itself and collect these resources when it's not on an expedition. Next up we have the trade specialist, which, as you probably guessed, has higher trade capabilities. These vessels can produce 1000 units every 30 seconds up to a maximum capacity of 125 units after a total of about 65.5 minutes. And once again you can collect these units by boarding the frigate itself when it's not on an expedition. Not a bad amount of money for an hour's work, right? And finally you've got the support specialist, which specialises in fuel supply instead of abilities. These ones are pretty useful on shorter expeditions to conserve fuel and give you a small improvement of fleet strength in all areas without increasing the fuel requirements. And these are also going to actively produce 2 condensed carbon every 30 seconds up to a maximum capacity of 100 after about 25 minutes, and once again just board the frigate and collect these resources and you're good to go. So, how to go about hiring them? Well, it's pretty straightforward really. When you see them out and about when you're exploring space, and that is fairly often by the way, what you need to do is travel close to them, and you should hopefully see the frigate captain is open for a good old chat. So what you need to do then is open up your intercom using the quick menu and talk to them, and there should be an option for you to hire their services. But it's important to note that not all frigates that spawn are available for you to hire, though there will be green icons you can spot to see which ones you can add to your fleet. And speaking of your fleet, as I mentioned earlier, you can have up to 30 frigates at any given time, and these can be dismissed from your fleet if you find better versions of ones you've already got. Or if you're just sick of their performance, either or. To do this on consoles, you hold down the right stick, and on the PC you just hold down the middle mouse button. Since the latest Echoes update, if you do stumble upon a freighter battle and manage to defeat the pirate dreadnought, you can then also hire the pirate frigates it left behind in a similar fashion. They will get into contact with you when you're close enough, and I've done this myself a couple of times now since the latest update. Each frigate has over 60 potential points in their life cycle and growth, so it may not seem overly important which frigates you decide to buy, as they can all be upgraded individually, but there can be a difference of 15 points between the best and the worst frigates, and some will consume significantly more fuel than others, which would seemingly cripple your fuel supply by as much as 50%, thus weakening your fleet by roughly 50% as well early on. So if I were you, I'd be a little bit picky about which frigates you decide to hire in the long run. And that brings me nicely onto the stats and traits of frigates. So each one is going to have a base stat values for each of the 5 areas and start from 0 for new frigates that have not yet completed even a single expedition. These will then slowly increase the more expeditions you send them on. And I'll go into more detail on that in just a few minutes, but for now, each frigate will have its base stats augmented between 1 and 5 traits. The combination of the base stats and trait source stats will be combined into the overall stats of that particular frigate. These will help determine the success or failure chance of any expedition that the frigate will be assigned to, and in some cases, the more expeditions you send it on, eventually any negative traits will be removed and then replaced with positive ones along the way, but possibly in a different area. So each frigate will have 1 out of 5 mandatory beneficial traits corresponding to the type of frigate it actually is. So for example, Combat Specialist will have plus 15 Combat, Exploration Specialist will have plus 15 Exploration, Industrial Specialist will have plus 15 Industry, Trade Specialist will have plus 15 Trading, and Support Specialist will have minus 15 Expedition Fuel Cost. Now, each frigate could have up to 4 other random traits which could be either positive or negative. So, an example of a positive combat trait would be a cloaking device which adds 6 points to your combat, and then a negative one would be a low energy shield which would take away 4 points from the frigate. So overall they could be positive, but less so when paired with a detrimental one. There is a long list of other optional traits, so I won't go into list them all off here, though I will leave a link in the description where you can find all of them along with how many points those traits will either add or take away from your frigate's stats. So, onto frigate ranks and ranking up. So, the more expeditions you send your fleet on, the more those negative traits will be removed and then finally replaced by more positive ones. The ranking up of your fleet will be based on the number of expeditions with an ever increasing difficulty and demand. You can check on how many expeditions each frigate has been on when you're in the Manage Fleet panel. And as you can see, I don't often send mine out on expeditions, but it's something I'm getting more involved in. Each time a frigate's rank is increased, this is when they're going to lose a detrimental trait if the frigate has any, and if not, a beneficial trait will be given instead. So your frigate should rank up after 4, 8, 15, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, and finally 55 expeditions. So if you've been super busy with them, they should all be a very high rank. So this means it is possible to take a C-class frigate and send them on a boatload of expeditions, and eventually it will be promoted to an S-class one. And even if you continue to send it on more expeditions, its base stats will continue to improve, but it will no longer gain any more new traits. But it will max out, I think, once it's hit about 55 expeditions. So once that happens, the total stats will differ only down to their individual traits. So once you've got that far, get yourself a new frigate and repeat the steps. Pretty simple. And as you're ranking them up, the designation of each of them will also change when its class is upgraded. So, take this one for an example. The C-class expedition type is going to be called a science vessel, and then when it gets upgraded to a B-class, its designation is going to be changed to an expeditionary cruiser. And I hope I said that right. But to save me from listing out each of the 4 different designations per 5 types of frigate, here's a pretty chart for you to look at that I will leave on screen for a few seconds so you can look at all of them. So I've mentioned expeditions in this video a load already, so let's actually talk about them in a bit more detail. So each day the navigator on board your freighter bridge is going to present 5 expeditions for you, and these are going to reset at midnight UTC time every single day. So since a few expeditions are going to take longer than a day, and since you can start all of them just before the daily refresh, it is actually possible then to have more than 5 active missions at any given time, assuming that you have enough fleet command rooms built into your freighter base, and also assuming you have enough frigates to send out. These expeditions can take anywhere from 1 to 28 real-world hours to complete, and the main goal of these expeditions are to gather units, rare artifacts, and other rare items. The good news is expeditions will continue to progress even if your console on PC is not running the game at the time, but the same can be said for critical events that can lead to the loss or damage of frigates will also happen in real time as well, which means if you're not there, you can't intervene. There is a chance you'll come back to your fleet command room the next day to find out your frigates have either been damaged or at worst destroyed, and there ain't nothing you can do about it. The traits I spoke about earlier can also affect other frigates on the expedition, which could either make the journey easier and less costly or harder and more expensive, so make sure you do your due diligence before sending out certain frigates with one another. Now, expeditions have different difficulty star ratings ranging from 1 to 5 stars, where 1-star expeditions are the easiest and 5-star ones are the hardest. I would always recommend that you make sure the fleet you're sending out on the expedition has a combined star rating of at least 1 star higher than the difficulty of the expedition to give you the best chance of success. And the reason being, if the stars are equal, there's a chance that your frigates will be damaged, and if the team's star rating is actually lower, there's a very, very high chance of fleet damage and even frigate loss. You probably won't be surprised to know that the lower class frigates have a higher chance of sustaining damage than your higher class ones. So, in the beginning of your No Man's Sky fleet journey, when you only have say 1, 2 or 3 frigates, the missions you'll do will be easier and take less time, but also give you less rewards. The difficulty, time required and rewards will all increase once you've recruited that 4th frigate, but a little tip here. If you get your 4th frigate when the other 3 are on an expedition, the rewards will be increased, but you don't have to wait any longer. So, what are the different types of expeditions and what are the rewards? Well, let's go through them. First up, we've got the combat missions, where the rewards are primarily units and items looted from enemies, such as geodesite and iridesite. Next, you've got exploration missions, where the rewards are discovered items such as gravitino balls and perhaps even an artifact along with a bit of units. There are also industrial missions where you'll gain refined stellar metals such as activated copper and other curiosities such as carbon crystals and rare metal elements. You've got trade missions where you're going to get units from trade deals along with any other trade items. And finally, there are balance missions, which are a random combination of all the previously mentioned ones. So a mixed fleet works really well for those types of expeditions. Actually, to be fair, it's a wise idea to send a combination of frigates out on expeditions and not leave any weaknesses, because they could include random encounters, and you don't want a mission failing and your fleet being damaged or even destroyed now, do you? So each expedition is going to require plenty of fuel, obviously. But you need to make sure that you have the frigate fuel blueprint to craft them, and this can be reward for finishing the freighter command mission. Frigate fuel, or frigate fuel, is crafted using dihydrogen and tritium and can come in either 50, 100 or 200 tons. And the fuel cost of expeditions depends on 3 points. So, the distance in light years, and they are rounded to the nearest 250 light years. Second is the cost of all ships' fuel in tons divided by 250 light years. And finally, any fuel cost reduction trades in tons. So for example, if you send support specialists on the mission, then they're going to reduce it. So make sure you've got plenty of fuel crafted, and if you're going on a bunch of expeditions all in one go. I've also mentioned that some of your frigates may get damaged on these expeditions, but the good news is they can actually be repaired. For a cost, of course. You will know which frigate or frigates are damaged, as they'll be marked in red, which means some of its systems are critically damaged, and if you were to send them out again before fixing them, they'd be further damaged and probably even destroyed. So how do you repair them? Well, you'll need to actually land on one of the damaged frigate's landing pads or teleport over from your freighter. And once you're there, the captain should get into contact and mark any damaged components. So these could either be inside or outside of the frigate itself, but it will always be accessible on foot. And it could be up and down ramps, through doors, or up a ladder, and when you've reached a damaged component, you should be seeing a repair interface. The required repair materials should be stored in either your freighter, exosuit, or starship inventory to be accessible during the repair process itself. Now, it depends on the component that is damaged. You'll want to make sure that you've stocked up on a few resources like, I think silver, gold, platinum, tritium, oxygen, pure ferrite, and ferrite dust. So make sure you've got a whole bunch of them in your inventory somewhere. And finally, with expeditions, there are some consumable upgrades you can add to your expeditions to increase the chance of success. However, these are only going to last for one expedition. So these are explosive drones, which are going to improve the combat effectiveness by 10 points. The fuel oxidizer, which will reduce the expedition's duration of a frigate fleet by 10 points. The holographic analyzer, which will increase the exploration capabilities of an expedition by 10 points. There's a mind control device, which will improve the trade effectiveness of an expedition by 10 points. And finally, the mineral compressor, which will improve the industrial effectiveness of an expedition by, you guessed it, 10 points. Now, I know that was all a bit of a massive information dump, especially around the expeditions, but my advice would be to recruit a whole bunch of frigates of different styles and classes and then send them on varying expeditions, either alone or together. I've been doing this a lot more recently, especially after creating this video, and you do learn a lot as you go, so go ahead and get stuck in. And there you have it, folks. There is absolutely everything that you need to know about frigates in No Man's Sky. I hope you found this video useful, and if you're still here, it would be totally awesome if you could support my channel by hitting those like and subscribe buttons. You can also now become a channel member as well, where I'll be posting coordinates to a whole bunch of super rare and unique items and places to visit. You're also going to get some unique emojis and badges when leaving a comment, so what's not to love, right? And as always, thank you for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one.